Four Noble Truths. Why seek truth? It's not what you think. You may know the story. The Buddha was once staying in a Simsapa forest with a group of monks. He picked up a few Simsapa leaves, which are like miniature aspen leaves, and asked the monks which was greater, the number of leaves in his hand or the number of leaves in the forest. The monks replied that, of course, there were far more leaves in the forest than in his hand. The Buddha went on to say that, in the same way, the things he had known through direct knowledge but had not taught were like the leaves in the forest. The things he had taught based on his direct knowledge were like the leaves in his hand. Why had he taught so little? Because in his words, the things he had not taught were not connected with the goal, do not relate to the rudiments of the holy life, and do not lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to stilling, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. And what had he taught? The Four Noble Truths. This is stress. This is the origination of stress. This is the cessation of stress. This is the path of practice leading to the cessation of stress. And why had he taught that? Because these truths were connected with the goal, did relate to the rudiments of the holy life, and did lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to stilling, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. This incident makes an important statement about how to read and understand the Buddha's Dhamma. He wasn't interested in stating truths simply because they were true. He taught truths that served a purpose. When his listeners acted on those truths, those actions would have a desired impact on their minds. It's good to take a close look at how he expresses the nature of that impact. He starts by using the word goal. In Pali, the word is atta, which means not only goal, but also meaning, benefit, purpose, profit. This word rarely appears in Western discussions of the Dhamma, but in Asia, it's frequently paired with the word Dhamma. Useful truths are said to be both atta and Dhamma. In fact, the whole point of the Dhamma is that it has an atta. The Four Noble Truths are a special kind of Dhamma in that they cover everything needed to serve that atta, beginning with the rudiments of the holy life. This is a shorthand reference to the virtues of the 5 precepts, as well as the atta itself, the attainment of total unbinding, an unconditioned dimension that's the highest possible happiness. In some cases, the atta of a Dhamma teaching is its meaning as expressed in words that are easier to understand. But in the Buddha's remarks in the Simsapa forest, the word atta obviously means something more than words. A direct experience of the goal, the reality of the freedom and liberation that the teaching is supposed to lead to. These two aspects of atta are closely related. We could even say that you don't fully know the meaning of the words of the Dhamma until you've directly experienced the goal to which they point, and which is their whole purpose for being. The Buddha was wise in emphasizing this purposeful aspect of the Dhamma because the mind, as he accurately saw, is purposeful as well. It doesn't simply gaze at views about the truth in rapt admiration. In its quest to eliminate pain or suffering, it constructs views about the truth and acts on them to serve its aims. To evaluate the worth of a truth, you have to look into the mind state that inspires you to assemble it, the purposes it inspires you to aim at, and the actions it inspires you to take. This was precisely the Buddha's approach. He saw that if you adopt a particular view or line of questioning, it would bend the mind in the direction of the mind state that created it. If you acted on the view, those actions would have a further impact on the mind, leading to experiences of pleasure or pain, depending on whether those actions were skillful or not. This is why the Buddha regarded views about truth as a type of karma, or action. In turn, he viewed those actions as part of a causal process, judging them by where that process ultimately led. If they led to an inferior goal, he would reject them. As for the views he himself taught, he chose them because they would inspire the kind of actions that would lead to total freedom from suffering. This active role of the Dhamma is explicitly clear in the case of the Four Noble Truths. Each truth carries a duty. It's a guide to action. You should comprehend stress, abandon its origination or cause within the mind, realize its cessation, all by developing the path to its cessation. The Buddha didn't impose these four duties on anyone. He simply pointed out that if you want to put an end to suffering and stress, this is what you have to do. At the same time, it's worth noting not only that the Four Noble Truths contain the fourth noble truth, which is a guide to action, but also that they themselves are contained in the fourth truth, the factor of right view in the Noble Eightfold Path. As a container for that path, the four truths explain why the path is a beneficial one to follow. As a factor in the path, they show that views are actions, to be adopted both because they're true and because they act as a guide to beneficial action in the form of the other factors of the path, leading to a goal that lies beyond them. This is why, when the Buddha gave metaphors for the path, including right view, he chose modes of transport, like rafts and chariots, means to a destination. When you reach the destination, the mode of transport can be put aside. In fact, he made it a general rule. For him to say something, it had to be not only true, but also beneficial in leading to skillful action. Further, he had to be sensitive to his audience, knowing when to say beneficial truths that were pleasing and when to say beneficial truths that were not. He gave the analogy of a baby child with a sharp object in its mouth. Sometimes you have to be willing to draw blood if that's what's required to get the object out before the child swallows it and suffers greater harm. So, the Buddha had to be strategic in how he taught the Dhamma. Unlike other teachers of his time, he didn't have a canned Dhamma that he rattled off to all his listeners. This may be why his followers presented their memory of his teachings in the form of dialogues, to show how the Buddha presented different aspects of the Dhamma to different listeners in line with the situation and their specific needs. Sometimes truths that pleased them, sometimes truths that didn't, but always truths that were beneficial. It's important to note, though, that in the Buddha's analysis of the possible varieties of speech, the idea that a falsehood could be beneficial was never even entertained as a possibility. The concept of useful fictions was, as far as he was concerned, out of the question. A strategic distinction. The Buddha's strategic approach to teaching is also shown by the distinction he made between teachings whose atha had to be drawn out into further explanations, and those whose atha was already drawn out and should not be drawn out any further. This distinction was so important that he said you were slandering him if you got it mixed up, trying to infer a further meaning of a teaching whose meaning was already drawn out, or claiming that there was no need for any further interpretation of a teaching that actually needed it. Unfortunately, he didn't give examples for these two categories of teachings, but when we remember that the Dhamma is meant as a guide to action One way of interpreting the distinction seems clear, and it's supported by watching the Buddha in action as he teaches. Some teachings don't give clear instructions for action. Instead, they describe the reality of a situation. In this case, the meaning has to be drawn out. What are the practical implications of that situation? An example would be the Buddha's descriptions of how the universe evolves, which portray events in far distant reaches of the past and the future, without giving explicit instructions as to how you should act. At the very end of the descriptions, though, the Buddha himself draws out the meaning. The changes in the universe come from the actions of living beings, so if you want to avoid the miseries that can be found in the universe, take care to act skillfully. As for teachings whose meaning shouldn't be drawn out any further, two prime examples are the Buddha's teachings on self and not self. Nowhere in the canon does the Buddha say either that there is a self or that there is no self. Questions of, who am I? Do I exist? Do I not exist, he says, are not worthy of attention. In fact, he goes on to say that views that attempt to answer these questions, such as I have a self or I have no self, are a fetter bound by which you're not freed from suffering and stress. So, to stay on the path, you should try to avoid paying attention to such questions. And it's not the case that they'll get answered at awakening. As SN 1220 points out, once you've attained even the first level of awakening, these questions no longer hold any meaning or interest for you. Still, for the purpose of arriving at awakening, the Buddha does analyze how the assumption of self comes about, pointing out how some assumptions of self are not skillful, while other assumptions of self, in certain circumstances, are. You can make use of the things that you identify as you or yours, such as perceptions and thought fabrications, as means to the goal. In addition, assumptions that you have to depend on yourself, that you're capable of the practice, and that you will benefit from it all, play a necessary role in pursuing the path. The Buddha calls this approach using the self as a governing principle. So even though he refuses to say that there is a self, he makes use of self as a strategy on the path. At the same time, he points out how not self is a useful perception at many stages in the path, and particularly in the last ones, as a tool for comprehending stress and abandoning its cause. Because ideas of self contain an element of clinging, which the first noble truth equates with suffering, the perception of not self is a useful tool for bringing that clinging to an end. This perception is even useful, at a very high level of the practice, for overcoming any attachment to the path or the goal, so that the mind, freed from all attachments, including any attachments to the perception not self, can reach total liberation. So here again, even though the Buddha refuses to say that there is no self, he uses not self as a Dhamma teaching leading to a higher Atha. This point is illustrated most clearly in MN 109. There, a monk, listening to the Buddha teaching that the 5 aggregates of form, feeling, perception, fabrications, and consciousness are not self, draws out what he thinks is a logical implication of the teaching. So, form is not self, feeling is not self, perception is not self, fabrications are not self, consciousness is not self. Then what self will be touched by the actions done by what is not self? In other words, the monk reasons that because the aggregates are all not self, there must be no self, so no actions will be able to touch, i.e., give karmic results to, what is not self. This line of reasoning would serve a very unskillful atta, giving license to all kinds of unskillful behavior. That's why the Buddha, on reading the monk's mind, rebukes him sharply, saying that he's senseless, immersed in ignorance, and overcome with craving. The Buddha then goes on to show the proper strategic use of the teaching on not-self, questioning the other monks listening to the talk about their assumptions of self around the aggregates so that they'll perceive the aggregates as not self, to develop dispassion for them, and to gain release. The atha both of the perception of not self and of the Dhamma as a whole. So even though the Buddha found useful roles at certain stages in the path both for the assumption of a self and for the perception of not self, those teaching strategies have their meaning fully drawn out. In neither case should you infer from them that there is or is not a self, for those views, as the Buddha pointed out, would induce actions leading away from the goal. Tests for the true Dhamma. The relationship between the Dhamma and its atha is so direct that the Buddha made it a criterion for testing what was true Dhamma and what was not. If you followed a Dhamma teaching and it led you to the atha he taught, an experience of unbinding, then you knew that it was the genuine article. He framed this test in different terms, from the most basic to the most refined, depending on his audience. For the Kalamas, a group of skeptical lay people, he outlined a very basic test. If, when you act on a teaching, it leads to long-term welfare and happiness, then you should keep following that teaching. For his stepmother, Mahapajapati Gotama, he framed a more extensive test. True Dhamma can be recognized by what it leads to in 3 areas. In terms of the ultimate goal, it should lead to dispassion and being unfettered. In terms of the means to that goal, to shedding, contentment, and aroused persistence. In terms of the relationships it fosters toward others, it should lead to modesty, reclusiveness, and being unburdensome. For Ven Upali, one of his foremost monk students, the Buddha formulated a test echoing his comments to the monks in the Simsapa forest. True Dhamma, when put into practice, leads to utter disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to stilling, to direct knowledge, to self-awakening, to unbinding. The Buddha saw the need for this sort of test in his own lifetime, as there are reported instances of monks distorting the teachings even to his face. He dealt with them severely to show how seriously he meant for his Dhamma not to be changed. He also stated that those who attributed sayings to him that he didn't say, or denied his saying things that he actually did say, were slandering him. He also foresaw that the tendency to distort the Dhamma would increase after his passing, saying that the true Dhamma would disappear in 500 years. For those of us living more than 2,500 years after his passing, it's a forecast that brings us up short. Is there no true Dhamma left anymore? But SN 1613 gives an analogy to explain what he meant. The true Dhamma disappears when counterfeit Dhamma appears, in the same way that genuine money disappears when counterfeit money begins to circulate in the market. In other words, genuine money is still there, but people begin to lose their confidence as to what's genuine and what's not. In the same way, true Dhamma can still exist, but it's surrounded by so much counterfeit Dhamma that even the concept of true Dhamma, as opposed to false, gets called into question. When counterfeit Dhamma actually came into circulation, and what it taught, is a matter of historical conjecture. A prime candidate is the teaching on the non-arising of phenomena, which appeared about 500 years after the Buddha's passing and claims that nothing really arises or passes away, and that everything is a timeless oneness. If this were true, then the 4 Noble Truths would not be true. for they speak of suffering arising and passing away. But again, whether this is the teaching that the Buddha had in mind when he foresaw counterfeit Dhamma is just a matter of conjecture. What's undeniable, though, is that the Buddha's definition of the disappearance of the true Dhamma describes the situation that prevails now, with so many contradictory versions of the Dhamma at large in the world. Some people even laugh at the idea that any version of the Dhamma has any right to claim to be right and others wrong. They make a comparison with maps, just as every map distorts reality, so that no single map can claim to be a totally accurate description of the truth. In the same way, every version of the Dhamma distorts reality, and so no version can qualify as exclusively right. But this is a misreading of the map analogy. Neither maps nor the Dhamma are meant to be contemplated in and of themselves. They serve a purpose, an atha, and their accuracy can be tested by seeing if they actually serve the purpose intended for them. The fact that a map distorts some aspects of reality is no problem, as long as it provides accurate directions for arriving at the goal for which it was drawn. If you're drawing a treasure map, for instance, you'll have to leave out some information. In fact, if you clutter the map with too many extraneous details, it becomes confusing and counterproductive. All that matters is that the route to the treasure is portrayed clearly enough to be followed, and that the route actually leads to the treasure. In the same way, the Dhamma is expressed in words, and the nature of words is that they provide only a sketch of the reality they describe. But even then, they can still serve a good atha if the lines of the sketch act as a reliable guide to take you to that atha. Just as a map shouldn't be cluttered with extraneous information, the Buddha found it advisable to avoid most of the philosophical debates about the nature of the world and the self extant in his day, so that his Dhamma could focus on being accurate in the basics. What's needed to get to the treasure of unbinding? We like to think that the contradictions among available Dhamma maps are immaterial, that they simply point out alternative routes to the same goal. But the fact of the matter is that they describe not only different routes, but also different locations for the treasure. They even describe the treasure in different terms. So they can't all be right, as we noted in the case of the Four Noble Truths and the teaching of the non-arising of phenomena, which means that we have to choose among them. Given that the Dhamma is not always pleasing, we can't let our likes and dislikes determine our choice. In fact, even when a Dhamma seems reasonable and fits in with what we already believe, that doesn't mean that it's true. Our only hope of finding the true Dhamma is to test it, to choose a Dhamma that seems promising and put it into practice, to see where it leads. This test entails more than reading and reasoning about texts. It requires high levels of commitment and honesty, and keen powers of observation of your own actions and their results, character traits that the Buddha looked for in all his students. It's only through being true yourself that you can know if the Dhamma is true. But then, the Dhamma promises a lot of truth in return, not just a theory about happiness, but a direct, unchanging experience of the highest happiness possible. This is its atha. The potential reality of that atha is what keeps the Dhamma a living tradition. Without that atha, it would be nothing more than an historical curiosity, some theories about the mind and the world that faraway people believed in the far distant past. It's because the Four Noble Truths are designed to be strategic, leading to a living experience that lies beyond the words, that even now, after all these centuries, we still care about the Buddha's handful of leaves. The desire for truth. The search for truths about pain starts with a truth in the form of a reality, the experience of pain itself. As the Buddha explains it, there are two natural responses to this reality: bewilderment and a search. The bewilderment comes from not knowing why the pain is happening. This is especially true for infants experiencing pain, but because the causes for pain can be so complex, unpredictable, and seemingly beyond our control, this bewilderment can last throughout life. The search comes both because we're bewildered and because we desire another reality. We want the pain to stop. It's in the psychological and social space defined by these responses that the Buddha formulates his teachings on truths in general and on the Four Noble Truths in particular. The social space is defined by relationships. Your relationships with other people, your relationship to the words you use to communicate with those people, the relationship between those words and reality, and the relationships among the realities you want your social interactions to influence. These relations start within the context of a duality, the difference between pain and the cessation of pain. Because this is a duality of realities, the truths that take you to the second reality will have to acknowledge this difference. The cessation of pain differs from pain and is preferable to the pain. Any teaching that denies this duality and the way we evaluate it won't satisfy your desires or needs. Within this duality, the Buddha articulates the search for the cessation of pain in these terms. Who knows a way or two to the cessation of this pain? The way this question is articulated carries many implications. 3 in particular stand out. 1. The fact that we're looking for knowledge from other people brings in the personal dimension of our desire for the truth about pain. We interact with others because we're looking for someone who has A. true knowledge about the reality of ways to end the pain, and B. the compassion to convey that knowledge to us. This is the context in which we begin to look for truth in the form of words. Words that convey genuine knowledge, spoken by a person who truly knows the relevant realities and wants us to know them too. It's important to note that our desire for personal relationships is strongly shaped by the fact of our suffering. The role of pain and suffering in shaping this desire is so basic and strong that it sometimes makes you wonder, if there were no such thing as pain and suffering, if our experience were already totally blissful, would we be interested in personal relationships at all? For these reasons, truth in this social dimension is a matter of true relationships within 2 further dualities. First, assuming a duality between reality and words, we're looking for a true relationship between the reality of the ending of pain on the one hand, and the words pointing to that reality on the other. The statements about that reality have to correspond to what that reality actually is. It's because of this duality that the Buddha used the word truth with a dual meaning: the truth of the reality and the truth of the words describing that reality. Second, assuming a duality between ourselves and the people we hope will teach us the way to the reality of the ending of suffering. We want a true personal relationship in which the person teaching us not only knows true words about the ending of suffering, but also has enough genuine compassion to teach us those words in a way that we can understand them and put them to use. We, in turn, will have to do our best to give the teachings contained in those words a genuine try. Only when a relationship is genuine on both sides like this can it be called true. 2. The fact that we desire the end of the pain is what shapes our attitude toward the words we're taught about pain. We're not interested in true words for their own sake. We want true words that help guide us to the reality we want. In this way, the words have to serve our desires, They prove their truth by genuinely leading us to a reality where those desires are satisfied. 3. The question behind this search divides reality into 4 parts, based on 2 dualities, one of which we've already noted: the difference between the reality of pain and the reality of the cessation of pain. One side of this duality, pain, is not desired, while the other side, the cessation of pain, is. The other duality relates to the fact when you think of a way that accomplishes an aim, you're assuming 2 types of real events: causes and effects. The way you're looking for is the cause. The end of suffering is the effect. These 2 dualities, taken together, divide reality with regard to the problem of pain into 4 parts: the undesired effect, pain; the unskillful cause leading to the undesired effect; the desired effect, the cessation of pain; and the skillful cause leading to the desired effect. In teaching the 4 Noble Truths, the Buddha takes all these considerations into account. To begin with, it's because of the double duality in the last point that the Noble Truths are 4, rather than 3 or 5. The Buddha offers to teach us these 4 truths in words that correspond to the reality of how pain can be understood and brought to an end, and he promises to be truthful in conveying his knowledge of that reality. He teaches these words not as ends in themselves, but as means to an end, the reality of the ending of suffering. As we will see, he identified true Dhamma as what passes the test in actually bringing that end about. The fact that he devoted his entire teaching to these issues is what makes the Dhamma unique and radical in its focus. But even though the question, who knows a way or two to the cessation of this pain, sketches out the basic framework for how the Buddha's teaching on the 4 Noble Truths is supposed to function, still, it leaves many issues unclear. The way the Buddha clarified these issues is what makes the Dhamma unique and radical in its particulars. If we separate the question into 3 parts, we can see where it's unclear. Who knows a way or two? What kind of way are you looking for? Do you want the other person to take the pain away for you? Or are you willing to do the work yourself? To the cessation. Are you looking for a total ending of all pain? Or will you be content to settle just for the ending of this particular pain? Of this pain? What kind of pain are you talking about? Physical? Mental? Both? In presenting the 4 Noble Truths, the Buddha sharpens these 3 parts of the question, at the same time answering the question as a whole. Let's look at these 3 points in reverse order. We start with the nature of pain and suffering. In the first Noble Truth, the Buddha lists many events that count as suffering. The list starts with a combination of physically and mentally painful events: birth, aging, and death, sorrow, lamentation, physical pain, distress, and despair, association with the unbeloved, separation from the loved, not getting what is wanted. These are all forms of suffering familiar to everyone. But when the Buddha summarizes what all these events have in common and makes them stressful, his analysis doesn't sound familiar at all. The common thread in all these forms of suffering, he says, is the act of clinging to the 5 aggregates of form, feeling, perception, fabrication, and consciousness. We'll discuss the meaning of this summary in Chapter 5, but here it's enough to note that the suffering of clinging is primarily mental. Without clinging, none of the other events in the list, even though they might be physically painful, can cause suffering to the mind. So mental suffering is the Buddha's primary focus when he talks about the ending of suffering. However, he states in the second Noble Truth that the cause of clinging is any craving that leads to further becoming, a self-identity in a world of experience. We'll discuss this point in detail in Chapter 6, but here we can simply note that the craving leading to becoming not only leads to mental suffering in the present moment, but can also cause you to act in ways that will lead to both mental suffering and physical suffering in the future. When the mind is freed from craving, it opens to an unconditioned dimension in which there is no birth, aging, or death at all. This means that a fully awakened person, after the death of his or her last body, is freed not only from mental suffering, but also from any and all physical pain. Because this deathless dimension lies outside of space and time, this freedom is total, once and for all. This connects with the second point. People, if asked for their most heartfelt desire around pain, would most likely respond that they'd want total freedom from all pain. That's our most primal desire about pain. We'd never like to experience it ever again. But day-to-day life has led us to believe that that's an unrealistic goal, as we go from one pain to the next, and then the next. So we tend to lower our sights, abandoning our primal desire, and trying to content ourselves with efforts to end individual pains as they occur. The Buddha, however, felt that life would be worthwhile only if he could hold to the heart's primal desire for a total cessation of pain and do his best to find it. The main message of his first talk was that he had succeeded in his search. This is the point of his third noble truth. The craving that causes suffering can be ended without leaving a trace, which is why the total end of suffering is possible. As for the way to the end of pain and suffering, even though we might prefer that someone else do the work for us, the Buddha found that that was impossible. We suffer because we haven't completed the duties with regard to the four noble truths, which means that we suffer from our own lack of skill. No one else can make us skillful. Other people, like the Buddha, can point out the way to develop our skill, but we ourselves have to follow that way if we want to stop suffering. This way is described by the fourth noble truth. It consists of 3 basic mental skills: virtue, concentration, and discernment, divided into a total of 8 factors. Discernment is divided into the factors of right view and right resolve. Virtue, into the factors of right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Concentration, into the factors of right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These factors will be discussed in detail in Chapter 8, but here we can point out 3 important features of this path. The factors of the path are all fabricated or assembled from the same 5 aggregates that, when clung to, constitute suffering. Right view, for instance, is composed of perceptions and thought fabrications. The labels the mind applies to things, and the thoughts it assembles from those labels. Right concentration makes use of all 5 aggregates. Also, an important part of right effort is the desire to master skillful action. This means that the path must be used strategically. The factors are developed until they have served their purpose, then they're abandoned along with the cause of suffering. The Buddha's image, which we'll have reason to cite frequently in the course of this book, is that the path is like a raft. You're currently standing on the unsafe shore of a river, while safety lies on the far shore. There's no bridge to the other side, and no boat, no nirvana yacht to ferry you across. So you build a raft from the branches and twigs you find on this shore, hold on to it as you swim across the river, and then, when you reach the safety of the far shore, you put it aside to go on your way. A more modern image would be of a load of bricks you're carrying on your shoulders. To suffer is to refuse to put the bricks down. To follow the path is to take the bricks off your shoulders and use them to build a runway. When the runway is done, you can take off and fly. Right view is one of two factors that the Buddha highlights in his discussions of the path. To have right view is to see things in terms of the Four Noble Truths. Because these truths are part of the path, this means that we will have to put them aside when we reach the reality on the other side. This connects to the point we made above, that the Four Noble Truths are true because they work. The technical term is that they're instrumental. They're meant to be used for a certain task aimed at a certain goal, like a carpenter's tools for building furniture, and then put aside when the task is done. Because they act directly or indirectly as guides to action, they contain inherent value judgments as to what's worth knowing for the sake of actions worth doing. The other factor that the Buddha often highlights is right concentration. This factor he compares to food in that it gives you the strength to follow the path. The levels of right concentration are defined by their feeling tone. Levels of rapture or refreshment, pleasure, and equanimity. The fact that these feeling tones can be consciously fostered means that they can provide temporary relief from suffering as you follow the path. The path doesn't save all its rewards for the end. Still, it requires work. Even though the Four Noble Truths respond to your desire for a total end to suffering, they don't pander to your desire that the way there be easy, or that it will follow your preconceived notions. This means that you need to be convinced that the path is at least worth a try. As the Buddha notes, the repeated reality of suffering and stress forces you to place conviction in at least some way to end suffering. For you to place that conviction in the Buddha's analysis of suffering and the way to its end, you need to develop conviction in the person teaching the way and in the words explaining the way itself, to the point where you're willing to give the way a genuine try. These three issues define the social dimension of the Four Noble Truths. In the next 9 chapters, we'll discuss how the Dhamma analyses these three issues with the aim of arriving at the reality beyond the social dimension, where the desire for the end of suffering is fully met.